Welcome to Seriously. I'm your host, Michelle. We're going to do something different this week because on Friday, the Louisiana Senate Government Affairs Committee held a hearing about 4 proposed new maps that would redraw our 6 congressional districts. Hundreds of people came to the Capitol to testify. So we're going to play some of that testimony without commentary because we think that everyone needs to hear it. Welcome to Seriously, the podcast that dives into the baffling.
We can't send them to a prison where there's animals, where there's livestock.
The ridiculous.
Like omelets better than sex.
And downright unbelievable political climate in red states like Louisiana.
So we can't go there. There are no vegan jails.
Seriously. Seriously.
Senator Carter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a point of order. The reason why we're here today is because there's a suspension of ongoing congressional elections. And so I guess before we start the agenda, I'd like to hear from the Secretary of State or someone from the Secretary of State's office.
Nobody is here from the Secretary of State's office.
Well, as chair of the committee, I have some very important questions that I would like to be addressed. I would like to know how many people have requested early ballots. Do you have that information, Mr. Chairman? How many people have requested early
Senator
ballots?
Carter, I have not, but have you reached out to the Secretary of State before this meeting?
I can't recall a meeting of the Senate Government and Affairs Committee where someone from the Secretary of State office has not been sitting off to the side. So it was my expectation that the Secretary of State would be in this committee meeting. We need to know, quite honestly, how many people had voted at the time the governor suspended the election and what happened to those ballots. Are those ballots being preserved somewhere? Are those ballots being counted? Can you tell me, Mr. Chairman, how many people had voted at the time the governor has suspended Louisiana's congressional elections?
No, I cannot.
Can you tell me whether or not those ballots that have already been cast, whether or not those ballots are going to be counted?
No, I cannot.
Can you tell me whether or not those ballots are going to be discarded?
No, I cannot.
Can you give the public any certainty that those ballots will in fact not be discarded?
I can't comment on that.
You can't comment on that?
No, I'm not in that role.
You would agree with me that at the time the governor suspended the election, that votes had in fact been casted in Louisiana's congressional elections.
They may or may not have.
And you can't tell the public as we sit here today the status of those votes?
Nobody has came to me and said that they voted. So I don't know. I've not reached out to the Secretary of State to ask that. All we're here for today is public testimony on the maps that have been filed.
But there's already an ongoing election regarding congressional maps that are in place. And my simple question is, what's the status of those votes that's already been cast? Are those votes going to be counted or are they going to be discarded? Simple question.
Senator Carter, I can't answer that question.
Okay. Have you voted yet?
I think I don't have to answer that.
Okay. Can you tell me that the votes that have been cast for the congressional elections, are those votes going to be counted or are those votes going to be discarded?
You've asked that question again.
I'm asking now about the votes after the governor issued his suspension of the current election. My first question was about the votes that were already cast before he issued the suspension.
We can go ahead and take a recess right now.
Well, I only asked like 2 questions. I want to know from the Secretary of State's office, and I demand to know before the next meeting, Wednesday of next week.
That's correct.
And I expect the Secretary of State or someone from her office or someone from the state of Louisiana to come and tell us at the time the governor suspended the election, how many people had requested early ballots? How many people had received early ballots? How many people had returned those early ballots? How many people had voted in the election? Following the governor's suspension of the election, how many people voted? What's going to happen to those votes? What's going to happen to the votes that were cast before the governor suspended the election? What's going to happen to the votes that were cast after the governor suspended those elections? Are those votes going to be counted? Are those votes going to be discounted? Are those votes subject to a preservation of hold regarding for evidentiary purposes? If not, I request that they immediately be held. for preservation of evidence. Do we intend to tally up all of those votes? How do the Secretary of State intend to use those votes? Also, I have specific questions about Louisiana Revised Statute 18:401.1, which is the emergency election procedures for the state of Louisiana. According to this language deals with emergencies related to natural disasters. I want the Secretary of State to come and present evidence on Wednesday of next week whether or not there's ever been a suspension of an election purely for political purposes. A suspension of an election purely for the purpose of drawing a map to affect who the winner or the loser of an election may or may not be. These are fair questions of the Secretary of State, and quite honestly, these questions should be addressed before we even proceed with trying to redraw additional maps. That's my request, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Carter. We will not have any clapping. I will ask that people be quiet and calm and respectful of the committee. Chairman Price, if you want to move on.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm here today to present to you Senate Bill 407, which is a critical and necessary step to ensure Louisiana Congressional District remain legally sound and geographically precise. Retain the 6th district structure and the existing minority district, but adjust specific boundaries. These technical updates ensure that the 6th district remains as equal in population as practical as required by the 14th Amendment of the United States Constitution.
Good morning, Senator Price.
Thank you, Senator Price. Good morning, Chairman and committee. I want to begin by saying plainly what I believe needs to be said out loud in this room, and that's that the Supreme Court's decision in Calais is a shameful moment in the history of voting rights. It weakens the practical enforcement of the Voting Rights Act, a law that was born out of sacrifices of Americans who were beaten, jailed, and killed for the right to vote. That law was enacted because this country had to be forced by law to treat all of its citizens as full citizens. And now, 6 justices, 6 individuals have told us that the very remedy for Louisiana's own government passed, signed, and defended and implemented map was suddenly unconstitutional. So let me be clear about what this means in human terms. It tells Black Louisianians who make up 1/3 of this state, who have built this state, who have sacrificed for this state, that even decades of organized political participation may still not be enough to secure fair representation. It moves the goalposts yet again. And it's done so in a way that is so disruptive and internally contradictory that the state of Louisiana, as Senator Carter has pointed out, is now actively working to suspend congressional elections that have already begun. That is intentional disenfranchisement. What Calais does, and what I want my colleagues to sit with today, is that this is a decade-long erosion of a legal framework that made meaningful Black political participation possible in the South. And despite the damage caused by Calais, the court did leave a door open, a narrow one, but it left a door open. The court said the state should not make race the predominant factor in drawing districts. Instead, it pointed toward electoral behavior, political geography, and voting patterns. So if that's the theory that the court wants to give us, then fine. Let's talk honestly and follow that instruction to its logical conclusion. Let's talk about voting behavior. Let's talk about party. Let's talk about actual election results over time. Because when we look at where Democratic voters are concentrated, where Democratic candidates consistently win elections, and where sustained electoral majorities actually exist, we arrive at 2 places every time: New Orleans and Baton Rouge. Not because of whose those voters are, but because of how they vote. Louisiana naturally supports 2 congressional districts where Democratic voters have a meaningful opportunity to elect their preferred candidates. That's not a racial argument. That's basic arithmetic. And arithmetic does not belong to just one political party. The Supreme Court itself has held in Rucho v. Common Cause that partisan line drawing is constitutional. So the principle cuts both ways. If it's legal to draw districts where Democratic voters actually live and vote, then it's equally legal to draw districts that accurately reflect where Democratic voters actually live and vote. New Orleans is a Democratic city, and Baton Rouge contains one of the largest concentration of Democratic voters in the South. And the evidence shows that these two communities can sustain congressional districts that give Democratic voters a genuine opportunity to elect their preferred candidates while still satisfying traditional redistricting principles. Compact, contiguous, respectful of parish lines, keeping major cities whole, keeping precincts intact, and most importantly, the districts can still be drawn while preserving Congresspeople like Speaker Mike Johnson, Majority Leader Scalise, and Representative Letlow, or at least her district, rather. We have two democratic opportunities. They exist, and they're legally defensible under the Supreme Court justifications. I should remind this committee that no black candidate has won statewide office in Louisiana since Reconstruction. Not once in more than 150 years. Louisiana's own legislative leadership has acknowledged this state's dark history with racial discrimination, and the voting patterns remain measurable and persistent. Less than 20% of white voters typically vote to support candidates than preferred by black Louisiana voters. And that did not emerge out of nowhere. That is the residue of the history of this state. Without fair district lines, black voters in Louisiana will continue to be systematically outvoted into political irrelevance, not because they failed to participate, but because the maps were designed to make their participation matter less. This committee and this legislature will have a choice. And when the history of this moment is written, when the people look back at what happened in Louisiana after Calais, this committee and this legislature will own that choice. The question is, will this committee and will this legislature have the courage? The people of this state deserve representation that reflects the votes that they have actually to cast. And I urge this committee to deliver it. Thank you.
Senator Jenkins for a question.
It is unfortunate that we find ourselves where we are in the state of Louisiana today. The Calais decision was dropped at a time that has created nothing but chaos and confusion, and it came with absolutely no instructions for a path forward. The Calais decision, do you agree, does not prevent Louisiana from drawing a 4-2 map. Is that right?
That is correct, Senator.
All right. It just simply says that it cannot be predominantly based upon race. I guess is the recommendation that's coming from the Supreme Court. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And that existing map was a map that was passed by a majority Republican legislature, signed by a Republican governor, and the record indicate that it was based upon political reasons. Is that right?
That is absolutely correct.
And that's why it's mind-boggling to me that we are back here today with a decision from the Supreme Court saying that the map was based on race, when everything in the record indicated that this was a politically motivated map generated by the governor. This particular map keeps most of the adjoining parishes together throughout the 6 congressional districts. Is that right?
That is correct, Senator. And this map actually was more compact, had less split parishes, had less split precincts than the map that was finally passed.
Does it provide an opportunity for blacks and other minority groups to elect a candidate of their choice?
That is the way it was designed, absolutely.
Okay. Does it present a better representation of Louisiana's population, with that population, minority population, being 33% African American?
That is correct. Mr. Chairman, at this time, I would like to bring to the table 4 congressmen who's represented this state in the United States Congress. Congressman William Jefferson, Congressman Cedric Richmond, Congressman Troy Carter, and Congressman Cleo Fields.
Mr. Chairman and members, thank you for the opportunity to address you this morning. I'm Troy Carter, a proud member of the Louisiana delegation representing this great state in the United States Congress. I want to look at all of you and say, it wasn't that long ago that I sat where you're sitting. I understand you've got a tough job. understand that the task at hand is not easy. As members of the Senate that will have the first crack at drawing these maps, I'm certain there are people pulling and tearing at you from every angle. I'd encourage you, as I did so many times, sitting in those very seats, that we dig deep into our hearts and try to do what's right. To not allow ourselves to be divided, to be eviscerated, to play into the hands who would rather see us divided. We're Louisiana. We're better than that, and we should do everything in our power to demonstrate it. At the close of the Constitutional Convention in 1787, Benjamin Franklin emerged from the Independence Hall in Philadelphia and was approached by a citizen who asked him a simple but profound question. He said, "Well, Dr. Franklin, what have we got? A republic or a monarchy?" Franklin's response has echoed throughout the generations. A republic, if we can keep it. Those 7 words may be among the most important words ever spoken about our American democracy. Because Franklin understood something that remains true today. Democracy is not a self-sustaining function. It is fragile. It requires vigilance. It requires courage. It requires participation. And above all, it requires fairness. A republic cannot endure if representation is manipulated to silence communities. A republic weakens when citizens begin to believe the system is rigged against them. Today, here in Louisiana, we're being tested, and the whole world is watching. The question before us is not merely about lines on a map. The question before us is whether we will honor the principle that every citizen deserves equal protection under the law. Louisiana is 1/3 African American. We have 6 congressional seats in our Orleans delegation in Congress. Fairness and basic mathematics both point to the same conclusion. 2 districts where Black voters have a fair opportunity to elect candidates of their choice. It's very basic. Not because anyone's asking for special treatment, but because democracy demands equal treatment. Franklin warned us that keeping this republic would require each generation to defend it, not with empty rhetoric, but with true grit and action, with integrity, with moral courage, with moral tenacity, against the odds, against the voices, against the noise, to simply do what's right. That responsibility now rests with us. The decisions made in this legislature will say far more than who we are and how we draw districts. They will reveal whether we will stand and still believe in the promise of a representative democracy. A representative democracy. The decisions made in the legislature are serious ones. Your jobs are tough. They're not easy. I understand that. I know that because I know most of you personally. I've served with you. I've enjoyed dinner with you. We've debated together. We've worked together. I think I know your hearts. And I'd ask you to not let anybody, any party, any politician, any person move you from doing what's right. You have the capacity. I've seen you do it. Let us be remembered as leaders who chose fairness over fear, justice over politics, democracy over division. Because the question Benjamin Franklin posed nearly 240 years ago is still with us today. Can we keep this republic? The answer depends on what we do now. My dear former colleagues of this proud and historic body, the Louisiana State Senate, where I spent some of my most significant days, with some of my most fond memories, with some of the most outstanding, intelligent people that I've ever worked with. My esteemed senators, colleagues, friends, let us keep on Louisiana. Let us remember the promise and the question that was posed in the comment from Dr. Benjamin Franklin. A republic, if we can keep it. And I ask you this as I leave, as I close. What kind of democracy do we want to leave for our children? What do we want history to say about us 100 years from now? Did we stand for division, or did we stand for fairness and unity?
It's been 40 years since I've been before a Senate committee or on a Senate committee. But 40 years ago, I chaired the Senate Government Affairs Committee. And we've been through reapportionment battles and all the rest. We used to worry then about where the fire hydrant was going to be in a district or the school or some path or some park and that sort of thing. We didn't have the heavy issue that you're facing today. When I got elected to the 2nd Congressional District all those years ago, I guess now 30-something years ago, it wasn't created by the Voting Rights Act. It naturally grew into a district that was largely African American. I was 18 years old when the Voting Rights Act passed. I can't believe that, but I was. 1965, the year I graduated high school. And I know all the stories about, and you've heard them all, but I lived through them. When my mother couldn't vote, my father couldn't vote. When the Voting Rights Act passed, the registrar closed the registration office, says we wasn't going to register anybody if you had to register anybody black. Reverend Scott, our NAACP leader, was shot over the same questions. That's how it was. I know the Supreme Court decision now in college says that isn't to be given much weight. And not even the effects of past discrimination should be given that much effect. But they did say that the current political environment and the current political facts ought to be given weight. And so I ask you to focus on not what the court said couldn't be done, but what the court still allows to be done. There is no plurality district or city that I'm aware of in this state that has elected a black person in that office. However, there are many examples of plurality white voter districts where black people elect white representatives and elect white leaders, mayors and parish leaders, all the rest. There are many examples of that. So the disparity that we have here is one of white people voting as a bloc when it comes to black leadership. That is what is still needs to be fixed in this state. We're not here because of an emergency. We're here because of an exigency. The exigency of the midterms. There is no emergency that brings us to this point. That's nothing really that needs to be decided now. My mother took me to what was called back then in East Carroll Parish, the East Carroll Parish Library for the Colored. That was my library back then. I went to it a whole bunch. She took me there all the time. I read and read until I couldn't read. And so she was a big fan of what Booker T. Washington said, which is basically this, that you can't get down in a ditch with a man and hold him down unless you're in the ditch with him. That's what holds us back. If we could all be in the same place, pulling together, and not one of us holding the other down in the ditch, we could make the progress that we need to make in this state.
Congressman Cedric Richmond, former Congressman Cedric Richmond, let me just start by saying I have been where you all are, which is the Louisiana legislature. I'm no rookie to politics, and I'm no stranger to the committee process. And I know, unfortunately, that there's probably nothing that I say here today that will change one vote. I thank you for the courtesy of allowing me to express my First Amendment right to say how I feel. And it's a quote I use very often, that statesmen worry about the next generation. Politicians worry about the next election. We are here today because we are simply worried about the next election. And I want to be honest with you all. When I came in today, I had no idea what I was going to say. I actually didn't have any real sense that it mattered. But then it hit me earlier this morning that this is not a moment for the senior guys to come back. This is a moment for all hands on deck. And it's a moment for all hands on deck because we have so much to lose. And so we talk about what this means, whether we should have 5 Republican districts, 1 Democratic district, 6 Republican districts, 0 Democratic districts. Look, let's just be frank. We have a 4-2 in terms of Republican Democrat. But let's be honest, we have the Speaker of the House and the majority leader, all which reside and hail from the great state of Louisiana. And with that, Louisiana still ranks 46 in health care. Because with this 4-2 delegation, we passed a $1.2 trillion cut in Medicaid. And we're a state where the people listening to me, black, white, in this state, we have a disproportionate number of people on Medicaid. We cut $185 billion out of SNAP, and that is feeding poor people in a state where we rank 50th in quality of life, 49th or 50th in the economy. We have a U.S. Congress that consistently acts opposite the best interest of Louisiana. Because if they acted in the best interest of Louisiana, we wouldn't be cutting health care. We wouldn't be cutting SNAP, food for poor people. We wouldn't continue to tell people the lie of we're going to do more with less, or that's rain you feel on your leg. Because you can't cut education and continue to tell people that education is the best way out of poverty. And that's what this Congress is doing. We are here today because of who's going to control Congress. I would just suggest that the two gentlemen on the far ends of this table have always put Louisiana first, have always been bipartisan, and have always uplift the people. If we have a speaker and a leader and we still rank this low, then maybe we ought to do something different.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. My name is Cleo Fields. I represent the 6th Congressional District of Louisiana. I know how difficult redistricting is. I had to do it twice. I was chairman of this committee. In 1991, I had to do redistricting. And we created a district that had 2 majority-minority districts, and we felt it was the right thing. And suits were filed, and the court ultimately said, you got it wrong. You know, I've served with each of you, and I know your hearts. I know how hard it is to try to get things done and put a majority of the people together to pass a bill. But it's personal to me because the first time a person who looked like me ever served in Congress from this state was John Withers Menard. And we were proud of that fact. I didn't even know it until I was elected to Congress, because I thought the first African American came from South Carolina. And then I did a deeper dive. He actually came from Louisiana, the 2nd Congressional District, similar to the district that Congressman Carter represents today. That was a proud moment. But when he got there, folk objected to his qualification. He won by 64% of the vote. And a gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Garfield, stood in the well of the Congress and said it was too early for a Negro to be seated in Congress. Let's save the $5,000 and let's send him back home. And they did. And so Louisiana went without representation. And then Charles Nash was elected 2 years after that. And that was a great moment for Louisianians. But since Reconstruction, Louisiana has elected 4 African Americans to Congress. And you're looking at all of them. 4. Despite the fact Louisiana's minority population is over a third black. The Price Plan basically creates 2 Democratic seats and 4 Republican seats. Don't do it based on race. Don't even talk about race when you discuss your redistricting plan. Do it based on party.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman and members. Edmund Jordan, State Representative, House District 29, and I also have the honor and privilege of serving as the chair of the Louisiana Legislative Black Caucus. You know, when I came up here, I didn't know exactly what I was going to say, but I will say this. We're talking about what Calais has said, and I think former Congressman Jefferson said it somewhat best. Let's not look at what Calais said we couldn't do. Let's look at what Calais said we could do. And so it is interesting to me, even under Calais, if you bring this map that Senator Price is moving forward with, and we're doing it purely for partisan purposes, it's not even an issue for the federal court to hear. When we're talking about partisanship, we're almost at an equal balance, 36% Democrats right now, 35% Republicans. So I do say a 4-2 map is the baseline. It's the bottom of where we should be. It's the least we should get. It should be, in my opinion, if we're going to do it, a 3-3 map. But nevertheless, we presented a 4-2 map. And we're fine with that. But I guess the thing that is, folks say, well, I know where your heart is. I say I know where your vote is. I'm not going to question your heart one way or the other. That's between you and your God or whoever you believe in. But I will say I know what your vote represents and what it says. And if you tell me I really don't want to do this, but I have no choice, are you really free? Because I can tell you in the last few weeks, I've never seen a place that's supposed to be so full of leaders, so full of followers.
I felt it was necessary for me to speak because in 2022, I offered House Bill 4, which is very similar in nature, almost identical to the two maps, the two districts that Senator Price has proposed today. We had maps that would have withstood scrutiny, but because we're not in control in any of the committees, and I want the public to hear me well. We don't have the controlling vote in any of the committees. None of those maps were allowed out. I'm emotional because James Cole Sr., my grandfather, was one of the founding members of the First Ward Voting League in Eden Park. When they registered people to vote, he was a minister. He got together with Gus Young and all of those people who organized to get people to vote. I'm passionate about this because here we are in 2026, rolling back the very things that my grandfather walked all over the city of Baton Rouge to register people to vote, to get representation for us. When this came out, I could not help but to think about the very first time that I came into the House and they allowed me to pray and they allowed me to speak. You can go back and watch the tape. And I said I was very proud to have been elected to be in the state capitol where my grandfather worked on the state capitol, where my grandfather marched for us to have voters' rights. I was very proud. I really thought that this body really meant what they said when they get up every time before every session and they pray.
Right.
I really thought that people were good and honest people, that they were going to do what the Constitution says, for everybody to be equal, for protection. But that's not what we're looking at today. Let's just call it what it is. It is pure racism to want all white representation in Congress. That's exactly what it is. I just came to say, what side of history you're going to be on when this thing rolls out? The nation is watching us. The nation is watching us. And then we want to be an example of how do you take stuff from people. I know Gary Chambers said he hadn't called them thieves. I mean, when you steal, that's kind of what it is. And we want to be that. That's who we're going to be known for. Louisiana's at the bottom of every list. But we're in control in the White House. Y'all are in control in the White House. Y'all are in control in this house. But we're at the bottom. We could be doing some other things like putting money into education, health care, the things that we need in this state. Employment, or trying to figure out how we can get these gas prices down. But no, instead, we're trying to take seats from African Americans.
So what we'll do is we'll hear Senator Morris's bills that he wants to present. The committee can discuss it with him. And then once his bills are done, then we'll have all public testimony to be able to come up.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sir.
Yes. Senator Morris on SB 121.
Members, as you all know, we are here because the current configuration of our congressional maps have been declared unconstitutional by the United States Supreme Court. Senate Bill 130 represents a...
Please close the door. Please have the door closed.
Senate Bill 116, some people have called it a 6-0 map. I don't know if that's what it is or not. Neither race nor party affiliation nor voting patterns were considered when this was prepared?
Senator Carter for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Morris, I'm trying to understand. You have 3 bills.
Correct.
Currently, we have 4 congressmen from Louisiana who are white Republicans, and we have 2 African-American Democrats from Louisiana in our 6 delegation total, correct?
Yes.
You have 3 bills. 2 of the bills reduce the African American Congress people from Louisiana from 2 to 1, and another bill is intended to go from 2 all the way down to 0.
No, it's intended to comply with the Supreme Court in Calais.
Let me ask it this way.
2020.
Maybe I'm asking it wrong. I'm just trying to get an understanding of what the bills do. If I'm looking at your Senate Bill 121 and I'm looking at Senate Bill 130, both of those pieces of legislation will reduce the number of African-American congressmen and congresspeople in Louisiana from 2 to 1.
Maybe, maybe not. It might reduce the number of Democrats, but not necessarily African-American.
Okay, if I look at Senate Bill 121, isn't it true there's only one district that will be majority African-American if I look at Senate Bill 121?
I can't remember the
I can give you a copy of it.
The racial makeup, but that may well be the case. But
if I look at
that doesn't prevent an African American from winning any one of those seats.
Okay, well, let me ask it differently. If I look at Senate Bill 121, you would agree with me. There's only one seat that's majority African American. If I look at Senate Bill 121, correct?
I'll take your word at that.
And if I look at Senate Bill 130, there's only one congressional seat that's majority African American. Do you agree with me?
I do not doubt that.
And then if I look at the other map that you presented, Senate Bill 116, there's not a single majority African-American congressional seat in the state of Louisiana. Isn't that true?
I'll take your word for it. Probably is, yes.
I asked you earlier whether or not the people need to be concerned about your legislation. Isn't it true you have legislation that has reduced the number of judges for the greater New Orleans area at the appellate court level? I believe you have legislation that's reduced 2 judges at the Fourth Circuit.
Yes.
Legislation to eliminate at least 5 to 7 district court judges, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yes.
My next question is, isn't it also true you've already passed legislation that's went to the governor, that's been signed by the governor, that eliminated the seat of Clerk Calvin Duncan? Isn't that also true?
Well, we consolidated the clerks.
And so now you want to reduce the number of African-American congressional representation in the state of Louisiana. That's what either one of your bills are intended to do.
No, that's not the intent.
That's not the intent, but that would be the outcome.
Maybe not.
What's the percentage of African Americans in your district?
I don't know. I don't remember.
Is it more than 50%?
I doubt it, but I don't.
Is it more than 20% African American?
I answered your question, Senator Carter. I don't know if you have the data in front of you. Just tell me. I don't know.
I think you should know, shouldn't you?
I don't know that we should care that much about race.
So if you're not supposed to focus on race, then what do you say to people that think is very racist to have legislation that eliminates Calvin Duncan, that eliminates the number of black judges in the city of New Orleans, that is now intended to reduce the number of congressional black leadership in the state of Louisiana? What do you do to those accusations that say, Senator Morris, this looks mighty racist of you?
I would say they're wrong.
But the outcome, the fruits of your tree shows racism. I mean, don't you see it? I think it's just pure coincidence that you don't even know the percentage of African Americans in your district, but yet you go around the state trying to eliminate positions of leadership held by African Americans. What do you respond to people that think that you have something personally against African Americans?
Senator Jenkins.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Acting Chair. Senator, and I was listening to your comments earlier, and I want to start with your Senate Bill 116, if I can. Do you honestly believe that Louisiana should be represented by a map that creates absolutely no Democratic seats or no seats where blacks and minorities can elect a candidate of their choice?
I think they can elect a candidate of their choice, but the state is majority Republican, or it votes majority Republican. They voted heavily for President Trump, so I would expect that there would be more Republican and conservative people elected regardless of their race.
Do you really think Louisiana cannot draw a map that would include at least a Democratic district or a district where blacks and minorities can have an opportunity to elect a candidate of their choice? Yes or no?
We could draw a map to try to elect Democrats if we so chose.
The way that your 6-0 map goes, it will elect white Republicans. Did you attempt to draw a 4-2 map at all?
I didn't look at I didn't try to gerrymander for purposes of race. I mean,
gerrymandering works both ways. I don't know why when we start talking about racial gerrymandering, we always want to talk about black folks. You can't do it for white folks either. Right. I can't make it any more simpler than that.
By 4-2, if you're asking me whether I intentionally tried to draw a map to elect 2 Democrats, no, I didn't do that, and I wouldn't do that. I would favor a map that favors Republicans because that's perfectly legal to do.
Right. Well, look like you're favoring partisanship over people being represented fairly in this state, based on that answer that you just gave.
I'm Leona Tate, chair and members of this committee. On November 14 in 1960, I, along with 2 other 6-year-old girls, walked through an angry mob to integrate McDonald 19 Elementary School in the lower 9th Ward of New Orleans. I was one of the McDonald 3, along with Tessie Prevost and Gail Etienne. We became part of history because our parents believed that we deserved an equal education, that we deserved dignity, and that we deserved a future without the chains of segregation. I went through something no child should go through to desegregate our state. And now, 65 years later, I'm watching as lawmakers attempt to go backwards and segregate us once again through disgraceful voting maps. Many of the supporters of this action seem to think the people believe them when they argue this is not about race. Let me be clear. None of us believe that.
I'm a native of Point Coupee Parish by way of St. Charles Parish and the Destrehan Plantation. I will not speak to the details of that journey, but because of the public schools of Louisiana, I got educated to a point and made it to Southern University and spent 37 years in the United States Army defending this nation, abroad and at home. What this topic brings up stirs memories of the past. A past where I caught a bus at 6:10 in the morning to go to a school in New Roads, and there was a school a mile from my house. The Supreme Court don't always get it right, because at that time it said separate but equal was good enough, and I got on that bus and passed that school a mile from my house to go a way through cane fields and cotton fields and make my way to New Road to go to school for 4 years. Because the Supreme Court said separate but equal. They don't always get it right, and they didn't get it right. Is this the way we want to go into football season? Is this the way we want to go into the festivals in the fall? This is stirring memories of the past that too many of us remember. Many of you don't, but there are some here that do. Let Louisiana lead its way out of this. We are a culturally mixed people. We may be divided red and blue, but we are culturally mixed people. And we come here in this body and we make laws that act like we don't get along. You go to downtown Baton Rouge and you see this entire community. You go to New Orleans and see the same thing. But we come politically and we've been divided by a national party that said this is what you ought to do. But the Supreme Court didn't always get it right. Let's remember that.
It's almost football season. Oh, yeah, they're going to celebrate diversity when they roll out the LSU football team. They're going to roll out diversity. They want to eliminate diversity and inclusion in our congressional representation. They want to eliminate diversity and inclusion when it comes to teaching it at our universities. But when they're trying to assemble a football team that can compete, or when they're trying to assemble a basketball team that can compete, oh, they want diversity and inclusion then.
I am Bishop Paul S. Morton, and I am the founding bishop of the Full Gospel Baptist Church Fellowship. The Bible says, judge not that ye be not judged. So I'm not here to judge anybody, but the Bible does tell me the only way that I can know you is by your fruit. And I understand if it's an apple, I understand what an apple is, I understand what an orange is. And I also understand what race is. Louisiana has to wake up. There is too much racism in this state, and we're tired of it. And once people have experienced freedom like we have, I'm here to tell you today, we ain't going back. This needs to stop. Now, if you say that you're Christians, and many of you say you're white evangelists or white evangelicals, act like it. You know what the Bible says.
My name is Theron Jackson. I was born and raised in Lake Charles, but I've lived in Shreveport for 35 years. With all due respect, Louisiana doesn't lead America in health care. We don't lead America in education. We don't lead America in opportunity. We don't lead America in child well-being. And quite frankly, in many of those categories, we are dead last. But somehow, this legislature can move with lightning speed when the issue becomes limiting black political power. We can't move fast for poor children. We can't move fast for health care. We can't move fast for cancer and Cancer Alley. We can't move fast for failing schools. We can't move fast for rural hospitals. But when black representation is at stake, suddenly the exigency is at a level of urgency. The majority leader of the Republican Party in Congress, they both come from Louisiana. You serve in a majority white Republican Senate, down the hall from a majority white Republican House with the white Republican governor. And this state is near the bottom of the nation in nearly every quality of life metric that actually measures human flourishing. So the question before us is not whether Louisiana knows how to exercise power. The question is who benefits from that power. If this legislature fought poverty as hard as it fought black representation, Louisiana might rise from the bottom. Sitting there today were all 4 black congressmen elected to the state from the state of Louisiana since slavery. Think about that. Since slavery, since lynching, since that shouldn't merely be politically observed. That ought to be morally convicting. It literally took centuries to get the 4 black congressmen who were sitting at this table today, and it shouldn't take one special session to try to undo what generations suffered to build. Senator Jenkins, you're right. Every map drawn by the other guy who's happy that he got some black friends is gerrymandered for white Republicans, even though he encodes the terminology by using the code word traditional, perhaps without understanding that we know that anytime you use the word traditional, you're signaling not y'all. And Senator Carter, you were right. DI works well in the fields, whether they're cotton fields or football fields. The Bible teaches us, woe unto those who legislate evil and rob the poor of justice. All these titles will fade. These committee positions will fade. Terms will be up. And I pray that one day when your grandchildren look at you and ask you what you did when the fate of history was before you, that you will be able to say, I had the courage to do the right thing.
This redistricting issue is not just about lines on a map. It's about whether people matter. It's about whether democracy is sacred. It's about whether every citizen has equal value in the eyes of the law. And I came to remind this body today that you cannot keep dividing people and expect unity. You cannot silence communities and expect peace. You cannot dilute voices and expect trust in government. This is a defining moment. History is watching you. Our children are watching you. Generations not yet born will live with the decisions that are made in rooms like this one. So today I urge you, do what is right. Not what is easy, not what is politically safe, but do what is just. Because justice is not liberal. Justice is not conservative. Justice is righteousness.
Gary Chambers, representing myself here. I am not surprised by the things that we see happening in our country today, because this is as true to America as it has always been. I was born in 1985. I'm 40 years old. When I was born, in 1985, there were no black members of Congress from Louisiana. I'm 40 today, and you're still taking things from black people. Anybody who has to cheat to win is a sucker. I'm going to say it again. Anybody who got to cheat to win is a sucker. And you continue to do this because you don't have a better vision. You don't have a better plan. You are your ancestors' children and grandchildren. Thieves, robbers, liars, consistently. Because you'll go to church on Sunday, tell the Lord you love him. Pray, but you ain't praying out of the same Bible I'm praying out of. Can't be.
I'm asking that we don't be called names. I'm asking.
I didn't call you a name. What did I call you?
Liars.
Do you lie? All men lie. The Bible says that.
Senator Carter, briefly.
Mr. Chairman, this is public comment. The First Amendment allows freedom of speech and expression 100% without limitation.
Am I going to be allowed to speak?
Your mic is on.
If you are taking seats from black people, which we are entitled to by the Constitution of this country, then you are a thief, in my opinion. And I'm entitled to that opinion.
I will not be
and
called
any
a thief.
senator, if you're offended by it, that's on you, not me. Now, if that triggered you, Senator, then you should go to bed tonight. And when you go to bed tonight, talk to your God and ask your God to change your heart.
Okay.
Because that's conviction right there. When black men with courage, conviction, and righteousness show up, it triggers something in you, and you feel a way about it. So you try to limit us, you try to steal from us, and you think that we don't understand it. Every one of the black men we put up before you stand head and shoulders above every one of you on this committee, and you know it. And it does something in you that makes you feel inferior. So then you come with these white supremacist tactics because you have the numbers. But you don't have the courage, because if you were really visionary leaders, you'd run against these black men with fair maps, and you'd get your asses whooped. Remember today. Remember the people that came from your state, that you looked in their faces, that you act like what they said didn't matter to you. If you were anything like what America should be, you'd find some courage. I don't know where y'all get it from, but you'd find some courage. You could talk to some of your black colleagues. They could tell you where the well is. But if you find that courage, history will record you differently. Now, you may not care what history records you as. Bull Connor didn't when he was running either. Neither did George Wallace when he was the governor of Alabama. But 60 years later, nobody thinks George Wallace was a good white man. And nobody will think that you were good white men.
My name is Charles Phipps, Vice President for Policy, Advocacy, and Legal Affairs at the Urban League of Louisiana. The premise of why we are here today, ladies and gentlemen, they are lies. The first lie is that white residents within Louisiana were racially discriminated against by the enactment of Louisiana's congressional maps containing 2 majority black districts. That lie misunderstands the legislative intent of the Voting Rights Act. That lie misunderstands the lived experiences of Louisianans throughout our history in our country and throughout today. The second lie is that the United States Supreme Court, in its Louisiana v. Calais decision, mandates the redrawing of our congressional maps right now in the midst of an election after 52,000 Louisianans have already voted. 52 Louisianans have already voted. And the third lie, and this is critically important to this bill, is that decision, the decision in Calais, warrants and amounts to a state of emergency. Now, let's just accept that last point to be true, that we are in a state of emergency. And Senator Barrow, if that was actually true, then it is unacceptable that the Secretary of State isn't here. What that shows is that there isn't a state of emergency. It is proof that there isn't a natural disaster, a force majeure, an unforeseen environmental occurrence. And what it does prove is that this is a political takeover. A political takeover not impacting percentages. You heard it a lot, the percentage of the district. This political takeover is impacting people. We have 1,115,769 black voters who will be diluted if you adopt these maps, particularly those of Senator Morris. And so what we need to ask the question then is, why are you so afraid of black political power? It is fear that black people, if given power would be as divisive, as harmful, and as self-centered as your record indicates? Why is this body so afraid of becoming the racial minority? Because that, in fact, is going to happen. The answer is power. Since 2011, there has been a Republican majority in this body, in both the House and the Senate. And according to U.S. News and World Reports, Louisiana is 50th in crime, 50th in economy, 46 in education, 46 in healthcare, 48 in infrastructure, 49 in natural environment, and 48 in opportunity. And we ask ourselves, why are we having a mass exodus of Louisianans? 100,000 people a year are leaving our state. And we ask ourselves why. It's because of the results of what this body has done with its power. When Black Americans have been given the opportunity to meaningfully and fully participate in our democracy, we have used our time, our talent, and our treasure in furtherance of realizing the American dream.
My name is Kobe Kelson, and I appear on behalf of young Black men in the state of Louisiana. I appear on behalf of the brothers of the Omega Psi Phi fraternity. I am a product of everything Black in the state of Louisiana. I am a product of Black leadership. We can, as Black people, perform. We're good enough to entertain. We're good enough to generate millions for the state, but somehow not good enough to have fair representation and political power.
Brandon Harris. So if it's okay to share, this is actually my first time here. It probably won't be the last, just because I've grown so much in this past few hours that I think that there's so many more people like me that also should experience this. I think that not only should it be just our community, but our kids, our youth. And I think that that's where today I've had the opportunity to speak with so many different people of different ages, races, and they all kind of share a similar sentiment that they want to see Louisiana be the best version of Louisiana.
Louisiana's young people are paying attention, and we are the future educators, nurses, organizers, attorneys, and elected officials of this state. We are inheriting every decision made here today, and yet too often our communities are carved apart through maps designed to weaken our voices instead to protect them.
My name is Ayanna Lockley, and I'm here today as the president of the LSU NAACP's chapter and as the vice president of the Louisiana State Conference NAACP Youth and College Division. I stand before you today because the decisions made in this room will shape the political voice and future of communities across Louisiana for years to come. As a college student and an NAACP leader, I work with students from all different backgrounds every day who care deeply about the future of this state and the future of this country. My peers, my mentors, my advisors, and my fellow students are organizing, advocating, voting, and working to build stronger communities because we want to believe that our voices matter. But we cannot, and I say we cannot, ask young people to continue to believe in democracy while allowing systems that make them feel invisible to continue existing. Redistricting impacts more than elections. It impacts schools, funding, transportation, public resources, and which communities receive investment and attention. When communities are politically weakened, young people often feel the effects first through underfunded schools, reduced opportunities, and fewer resources to support their futures. So today, I urge this committee to protect voting power, support maps that keep communities together, and ensure that every single Louisianian has an equal opportunity to be heard. Because protecting the voices of the people is not partisan, it's patriotic. Thank you.
My name is Sarah Whittington with the ACLU of Louisiana, and I will just basically acknowledge and say that thank you today for hearing us and seeing us. We will be back again and again and again. What you see today is exactly how democracy is supposed to work. But as someone that comes here and sees all of you very frequently, I have to acknowledge that I say that even though the rules have changed, because what is happening today in this committee is not something that has ever happened in our committees before. To testify all at once, in globo, on multiple different bills. Generally speaking, when we have trained and talked about bringing community members in here to know what to do, we all show up in support of 407. We wait our turns, and then we talk in opposition to these other bills. And what I'm hearing and seeing today is that we just want to rush this system and get people out of here. The weather notwithstanding, acknowledging how this is working.
Ms. Whittington, I do want to be clear. We are going to bring these bills back up next Wednesday, and we'll be able to do the process all over again
and we will be here to do it.
And it
Thank
will be
you,
done
Chairman.
exactly like you said. We just wanted as much public testimony to be able to come here today to have enough time to we can go to midnight if we need to. And
We
that's
could do a road show, couldn't we, Chairman?
Well, I don't have to answer questions
You do
from
not.
the panel.
And this is actually diverging from my general, very straightforward testimony, as I want to talk today about a book that I read to my children, The Walk by Winsome Bingham. And if you have not read it yet, and if you have small humans in your lives, get this book for them. Because this book teaches children what is crucial to our democracy about civic engagement and the power of our voices and our votes. And it is, and I want to acknowledge, a gathering of treasured souls, Ms. Bingham calls it, and that leaders are not born, they are made through molding and modeling. Molding and modeling is exactly what's happening here today, both I think for good and for less good. These collective communities are what makes our democracy happen. We show up, we show out, and we make our voices heard. And so I want to be clear about the choice that you're making. If you pass these maps eliminating black congressional representation that was won after decades of litigation, organizing, and sacrifice, you will be telling black Louisianans that their votes matter less than white Louisianans' votes. You will be saying that 1/3 of this state's population does not deserve fair representation in Congress. And I say that because I have white friends. You will be doing this knowing, absolutely knowing, that this is wrong. You can demand a fair map like SB 407 that reflects Louisiana's true diversity. You can honor the voters who elected you instead of the party leaders who are pressuring you. And I want to make this clear. When you have these choices will define you.
I represent a base of people that are typically double disenfranchised. They're both black and have criminal records. And we know the history of Louisiana. We know the fight that some of you have been part of, even voting for the right to vote for people with criminal records. But then on top of that, too, there's a thing called felony disenfranchisement and prison-based gerrymandering. And so about 50,000 people or more in Louisiana are used to bulk up the districts and then not given the right to vote. So it's one man, no vote, right? And on top of that, the people who represent those prison districts often don't represent the issues that their so-called constituents have. And that includes people who are dealing with ICE detention, people that are dealing with pretrial jail incarceration, who are being denied the right to vote here in this body 2 years in a row. But the biggest concern that I have right now overall is, are we going back to pre-Voting Rights Act? Are we going back to 1963? The goal has always been the same in this state, and I hope that that is not the goal today. Fascism will always value loyalty over competence. I've seen this legislature in this session do something they don't do typically, is they don't debate. They just listen. They don't bring facts. I've heard on multiple bills, the Secretary of State not show up to even put in a white card to answer questions, as they did today, which is a strange and disturbing pattern. On SB 256, similarly, we saw Senator Morris say, "Oh, shucks, I don't know what the bill will do." And we're hearing the same type of thing today, this sort of evasiveness. And I know that y'all are being asked to follow whatever the governor instructs you to do. What we need is people to step up and have political courage. John Major Winsome, he said the Constitution is both colorblind and color conscious. And last, I just want to leave the people with something that you too can go to, which is districtr.org/plan. So you can go and you can make your own map. It takes you 10 minutes.
I come to you as a member of the Louisiana Democratic State Central Committee, as well as the West Baton Rouge DPAC, and to say that I'm perplexed is putting it very mildly. I am in support of Senate Bill 407 and in opposition to Senate Bills 116, 121, and 130. For the life of me, I do not understand how a senator can propose a bill or any bill before this board when they cannot give you or tell you the demographics of their own district. How can you not know how many African Americans you have in your own district that has the power and the ability to vote there? Gerrymandering is gerrymandering no matter where you put it. Whether it's black gerrymandering or white gerrymandering, it's still gerrymandering. And if Khalid versus the state of Louisiana says we're not going to gerrymander, we shouldn't be doing it on any lines. This current map that was the subject of this litigation, that was Governor Landry's map. That was the map that he had selectively drawn. That is the map that he testified and supported through Louisiana, through the federal court, and up to the Supreme Court until he was directed to do otherwise. Let's not take this for granted and think that some big change has happened. What I need you to understand that a vote in favor of Senate Bill 116, 121, or 130 is actually going to be a vote against your own positions and the seats you hold now. If your minds are made up, I would ask you to reconsider your position. Because when you place your vote in favor of any one of those threes and against 407, what you're telling the public, what you're telling all of your constituents is that you don't want your seat anymore. And I can tell you right now, we will have people to run against you, whether they win or lose. It's up for the people, but you will work for your seat, and you will spend a lot of money. How can you look yourselves, your children, and your family, your friends, and your constituents in the eye and say, hey, I voted for a bill along party lines because that's what I was told to do. Everyone up here is a man and a woman who have their own minds. I need you, and I am begging you to utilize that. Utilize that, because if not, you're going to face opposition. I voted for Mr. Kleinpeter. He knows that I voted for him. I made no mistake about that. And the 362 people that contacted me via phone and via text, I also told them to vote for Mr. Kleinpeter. Now, say if they talk to another 150 to 200 people that they said that Ms. Benoit said vote for Mr. Kleinpeter. A vote for this bill is not going to get that again.
Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this episode. Please don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe, and we will be back next week with a whole new episode. Seriously is presented by Lift Louisiana, a nonprofit organization advocating for reproductive health rights and justice.